looking for that renegade. I calls it like I sees it. A spade is a spade. A good man is a thing of yesterday. Yeah. They don't want them a good man. Always.
I usually fade that out, but it's been too long. I messed it up. Oh well.
That's okay. That's okay. It's been a
I
minute
uh
since
I
we've heard
missed
the
our
song.
song, man. I missed our song.
It's on my playlist, so I hear it,
Oh, cool.
and and it's been a kind of an unusual reminder because we haven't been doing the podcast for a couple months. So when I hear it, I'm like, oh, I missed that, of
Yeah.
course. But we're back.
We're back.
Here we are.
The
So it's good.
down but not out.
That's that's the that's a good way of putting it for sure.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm very happy to be back. Yeah, it's been a couple months, which is crazy. Time goes quickly.
Lots
Um,
happened in a couple months.
it has, it
Yeah.
has.
Yeah.
I don't know.
For both of
Seems like
us.
when you're young, time kind of flies by, but I don't know. Time has been a little slow for me lately, which I guess is good.
I guess. It depends how things are going, I guess. You know.
Yes, yeah, I
If
guess it's true.
if things are wonderful every day, you want it to go slow. If it's like, I don't know. Some days you wish
That's
they'd disappear. Every time I catch myself wishing a day away, which I do,
yeah,
I'm like,
yeah,
I wish this day would be over.
yeah.
Catch myself thinking you should never think that.
Really.
You've
No,
only got so many days on this planet. You shouldn't be wishing any of them away.
it's
But
true.
I
It's
do. I do.
I have for sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
But, we're human. That's what we
I
do.
guess I guess it's a mindset, and so you know, sort of the way we think, way we kind of process our day is kind of how we make it, how the reality of it. So, um, I
Well,
guess
like,
we're
sorry, like this week, you know, everyone that knows me knows what my beautiful girl, my Ava, my puppy, my dog, I lost her. Um,
yeah,
and I'm not going to talk about that because I'll get upset, but I lost her. I loved her. But then
yeah,
I had a lot of stuff to do on Monday.
yeah,
And I felt like I was not, I know it sounds ridiculous. You shouldn't get time off for your dog, but I felt like I needed it. Like I was not in any headspace to do stuff, but I had stuff
sure,
that could not be changed and it was important.
yeah,
And I ended up, uh, I had to go to Halifax. I had to meet with one of the buyers from out of town. I'm not going to say names because sometimes people don't want to be named, but you know what? It turned out to be good. He's an old friend of mine. They took me over to dinner. They made me feel good. It ended up being all right. So,
yeah. At least,
business went well. So in the long run, it was good to, my wife said to me, she said, "Go out there and do something. It's okay. Get it off your mind. Get out there." And she was right. She was right.
yeah. I was going to say that. I mean, kind of sitting at home and thinking about it all day long probably wouldn't have helped. So getting out there and getting busy and kind of taking it off your mind, of course, would help. Um,
I guess
and
the hard part was my wife was home alone that night.
yeah,
And that was the first time in her adult life that she was in the house without either a person or a dog.
wow, wow, okay,
I'm not saying not at a hotel or something, but I don't even
yeah,
think she's been in a hotel by herself. But in the house, that was definitely the first time she's been in her house since she was
yeah,
19 years old without a dog or a person. So
yeah.
it felt very empty to her, very empty. So
I'm sure, and I think there is something in that to be said. Like maybe sometimes being on your own in a situation like that is maybe beneficial. Like just to sit in it by yourself and to just process it by yourself.
hmm, maybe.
A lot of time in our lives we spend on our own, and so maybe like there's something to be said for just the capacity to be able to kind of just process things on your own, and
Yeah.
having the comfort of others is all obviously great, but sometimes to kind of just process things on your own is okay too, right?
Well, the truth of the matter is that we have to spend time on our own. So we have to learn to be comfortable in our own skin, in our own time, in our own place. That's
Yeah.
what life is about. And
Yeah.
you and I have been
Absolutely.
spending a lot of time in our own different challenges and ways to try to figure out what's going on in our lives. So it's not easy.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a process for sure. And yeah, I think we'll probably touch on that a bit today because I think a lot of what we're going to talk about today is spent alone kind of in our own heads. You know, we're going to talk about fear. That's our topic today. And yeah, a lot of fear comes, just from our own thoughts, right?
I think all of it.
Pretty much, right? I
Well,
mean,
just about. I yeah, it's funny. I didn't prepare at all for this today because listen, we've talked about doing this for a while, so I thought about it a lot. But
yeah,
when it comes to talking about fear, I think I could do 10 podcasts on it. Like I have no problem talking about this today. And I don't mean that in any kind of way. I'm very comfortable talking about fear. So
right. Yeah, yeah,
so we're gonna, as Chris said, we're gonna talk about fear for our comeback episode. I think it's gonna
we
be a
are.
great episode.
We
Uh,
are.
so Chris is gonna start us off with a definition, I assume.
Yes, I am. And it's funny because since we left off, um, we had talked about doing fear a couple months ago. And I don't know whether I was in an arrogant or whatever I was doing. I was like, what? I don't have any fears. So I don't even see how that's going to be a podcast. But of course,
I won't tell you what I was
with,
thinking when you said that. I was like,
yeah,
oh,
with
okay.
with some time and some reflection, of course, I have fears. Maybe I just didn't want to vocalize them at the time. I don't know what it is, but
Oh, I think it was some sort of self-defense. Yeah, like
probably. Uh,
unconscious. You know,
well, it became conscious,
it
so
did.
here we are now. So I did do some preparation and
Some real life stuff.
some real
Anyway,
life.
it's
So
cool.
yeah,
I'm
all
glad we're
right,
here. Let's go.
yeah. So I'm gonna read the definition of fear. Of course, I drill down into it. So there are a few things, but the main definition of fear is an intensely unpleasant emotion in response to perceiving or recognizing a danger or threat. Fear causes psychological changes that may produce behavioral reactions, such as mounting an aggressive response or fleeing the threat.
Wow.
Makes sense, right?
Yeah, that's wow.
But, a couple things that, of course, come from it. It's an unpleasant emotion, and it's a perception or a recognizing of a danger or a threat. And it also causes psychological changes that may produce behavioral reactions such as mounting an aggressive response or fleeing a threat. And, fleeing a threat could be running away, or it could be really just like going into like a shutdown mode where you go into like what's called freeze, where you just like you can't really respond and you get like really anxious and you get like so there's a lot to that. Um,
Yeah, it could be not calling somebody back. It could be ignoring like a bill collector calling you, or boss, a spouse who wants you to address something, anything. There's a lot of ways
absolutely,
to be scared.
absolutely. Um, I went a little further and I'm going to read what is the psychological definition of fear. So this is psychologists define fear as a protective, primal emotion that evokes a biochemical and emotional response. So again, there is actually a biochemical, like something happening in your body when you sense fear or danger, right? Um, so yeah, it alerts us to the presence of danger or threat of harm, whether that danger is physical or psychological.
Well,
We've all had
you have a reaction whether you want to or not. There's a
big,
biochemical means your body's doing it without you telling it to do it.
absolutely. Um, yeah, and then it again goes on. Fear arises with a threat of harm, either physical, emotional, or psychological, real or imagined, While traditionally considered a negative emotion, fear actually serves an important role in keeping us safe as it mobilizes us to cope with potential danger.
Yeah,
So,
that makes, I mean, you can take that to a pretty basic spot. I mean, if a bear is coming at you,
yeah,
your fear should tell you to get the hell away from that bear, you know.
absolutely.
But if you didn't
Absolutely.
have fear, you might stand and go, I'm going to take this bear on, you know, and then you did.
Yeah. And I mean, I thought back to like, whatever, couple 100,000 years ago when cavemen and when there were like saber-toothed tigers and
Hmm.
things like that was when really I would assume that fear kind of really started. You're sitting by the campfire with your buddies and one of them gets torn apart by a saber-toothed tiger. Well, that's pretty fucking scary. Like,
I think, I think
right? I
every
mean,
time I think of fear, I think saber-toothed tiger.
I do too. It's like, oh my God. But thankfully there are no saber-toothed tigers. They're all gone. So, for most of us, the threat of actual real physical, thankfully, for me, for you, for the most part, there's not a lot of threat of physical fear
Right.
because I don't live in Africa. I don't there's not poisonous snakes here. There's just not a lot. So the reality of most of it, most of the fear that we have now is in fact psychological. It's
Or scared of other men, other human beings. I think that's our biggest fear.
possibly, yeah. I mean, threat of physical altercations. Thankfully, again,
Robberies, break and enters, you know,
yeah,
the crazy drivers, road rage. There's things
sure,
we have to go out and be scared of every day, I think. Look, it doesn't happen.
yeah.
You
I
gotta,
mean, I don't personally get in my car and think, oh my God, I'm going to get into a road, but it's possible. Like,
possible.
certainly
You
possible.
could have a fender bender with the wrong person, and all of a sudden you could be in the middle of something nasty.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Now I know it's you. You're usually the one road raging, but I'm a very calm, peaceful guy.
I am a very calm, peaceful driver. Do not road rage
I'm
at
just
all.
kidding. I'm just
Actually, it's funny that you say that because when I was living in the city, driving in the city obviously versus driving in the country is totally different. I mean, the amount of times you use your horn when you're out in the country is zero.
right.
But all of a sudden, I found myself like using my horn in the city a lot. People weren't turning fast enough, but then I started like there were a number of occasions where there were a few cars ahead of me and we're all trying to turn right, and I'm back there honking my horn, and I realize there's somebody crossing on their bike or walking, and I'm like I can't even see them, and here I am honking my horn. I'm like, what are you doing? Like, so it's just like these stupid little things, but
No,
um,
I understand. I've gotten better at that. I told a
yeah,
story already in a podcast. I won't repeat it, but something I got my comeuppance one day and I just
yeah,
stopped.
yeah. It's like,
Done it.
oh man. So
What's
I
the
also
hurry?
I'm gonna drill into a couple of famous quotes on fear because I think they're really
Oh,
good to
yeah.
start to start the podcast with because I mean, you read them and you're like, this makes so much sense, but applying it in your own life is kind of okay. Well, so I think it's worth reading some of these and just kind of understanding them. I love this one by Dale Carnegie. Dale Carnegie wrote a number of books. He was an American industrialist, made lots of money. Anyway,
Carnegie Hall's named after him, right?
that's right. His quote is inaction breeds doubt and fear. Action breeds confidence and courage. If you want to conquer fear, do not sit home and think about it. Go out and get busy.
Wow.
How true is that?
Very true. Yeah. I was thinking about something that goes along with that. So that's great. Keep going.
You're going to love this one. I won't do the voice, but you'll get it. Fear is the path to the dark side. Fear leads to anger. Anger leads to hate, and hate leads to suffering.
Yoda.
That is Yoda. That
That
is Yoda. And
wow.
yeah,
But do you know how deep that is? Like that is a fantastic quote.
it really is. And I'm going to touch on it in a book quote, but it is true. I mean, fear does lead. I mean, we just read the definition. Fear leads to, generally speaking, can lead to aggression. So, Yoda's version is fear leads to anger, anger leads to hate, and hate leads to suffering. We've touched on suffering, in the Buddhist principles. We all suffer, but it doesn't have to turn to hate, I guess is the point of it, right?
Hate really doesn't help anybody, you know.
Another one, Nelson Mandela. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear.
Do you
That's
know
a
how
good
good
one
it
too.
feels? Do you know how good it feels to conquer fear? That it's
Oh
pretty,
my God.
and
Yeah.
we've all conquered our fears at one point or another. So
Some of them anyway, right?
yeah, some of them, yeah.
Ralph Waldo Emerson, famous poet. He who is not every day conquering some fear has not learned the secret of life.
Oh,
Uh,
he's saying it all. That's a big one.
Here's one from Salvador Dali. Have no fear of perfection. You'll never reach it.
That's
Right?
true. That's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. Henry Ford, one of the greatest discoveries a man makes, one of his greatest surprises, is to find he can do what he was afraid he couldn't do.
Yeah, yeah,
Babe Ruth, don't let the fear of striking out hold you back,
right.
right?
Because if you're so scared of striking out, you won't swing in the first place.
Yeah. And then the last one, and I've said it a few times on the podcast, is the Mark Twain one. I've had a great many fears, most of which never came true.
Which goes along with what we've talked about in the past. 99% of what you worry about never happens. You know,
Exactly. Yeah.
worry is such a waste of time.
Uh,
I've wasted a good part of my life worrying. So
I think
I'm
everybody, it's nearly impossible not to worry. It's just like, what are you really worrying about, and is it worth it?
I'm
Just
gonna. I got one quote.
okay.
I'll go back to you. I just got one, and I
Yeah.
think everyone knows it. It's from FDR.
Yeah.
Only
Franklin
thing we have
Delano
to fear
Roosevelt.
is fear itself.
Is I is it FDR or is it Winston Churchill?
No, that was Franklin D. Roosevelt.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Winston's got a lot of them, but that was FDR, and he said the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
It's amazing.
That was a country that was coming off a world war, and they were heading towards another world war, and he was
Yeah.
speaking to everybody. And I thought it's hard to believe that was back in 1932. That's almost 100 years ago, but that's still, I think that phrase is used every day somewhere.
It should be. It should
Yeah,
be. It should
because
be.
it really is true. The only thing we have to fear is fear.
Yeah.
It-
Yeah. And
and
why
I
are we
and I was
afraid of
thinking
it?
about a couple of those quotes, and it just came to my head about preparing for fear. Like I'll admit it, I'm afraid to go out and get in a bar fight with some big guy because one, I'm not a great fighter because I've never fought. I'm just not.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
there's guys like The Rock. When he
Yeah.
walks into a room, or Jason Statham, or Bruce Lee, or whoever, they're not scared when they walk into a room because they've prepared themselves
Yeah.
not be scared.
Physically? You mean because they're physically huge?
Because they're physically huge, they know how to fight, they know how to handle themselves. They probably don't even fight that much because they don't because no one's going to fight with them, right? Um, it's so you say, well, yeah, you can walk in and not be scared, and I've never been in a bar fight, so why am I scared of something that's never happened to me?
Right.
But
You don't even spend a lot of time in bars. So
I,
what
because I'm scared. But yeah, I just think it's like a hunter's not scared to go in the woods because he knows what to do in the woods. He's prepared himself to know how to hunt and deal with animals and know stuff. I'm not. Give me a gun and
right,
put me in the woods. I'll probably end up killing myself, not an animal, you know. So
right, right.
um yeah, I don't know. I think there's different things well like I'm a big F1 race car. I love F1 racing. You
Yeah.
put me in an F1 car, I'm going to be scared to death because that thing is going to be like, whoa,
Well, you're not going to go 270 kilometers an hour. I can guarantee you
not for
that.
long. But those guys have prepared their whole life since they were
Yeah,
5 years old to do it,
they have.
you know.
Of course they have.
So
Yeah.
you can prepare yourself not just to learn how to do something, but it can prepare you to deal with fears of certain things, right? If you prepare yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But I mean, maybe Lewis Hamilton would be really scared of doing a cold call at some furniture store to try to sell some mattresses. He'd be like,
absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it's true. We prepare ourselves for everything. I mean, it's like asking a girl out for the first date you ask out when you're a kid, you're scared to death. But by
oh,
the time you get to the 10th one, you know,
yeah,
it,
maybe you got it
it's
down.
a little
Yeah.
better, a little better.
Well, and to your point on that, I guess like once you've had some success, your fears tend to go away,
Yes, exactly. Exactly.
right? You know, once you are more prepared, you're less afraid.
Well, and listen, I know I'm jumping ahead, but I've just thought of this. I should have wrote it down, but when I can't make a decision, because indecision is one of the things I hate the worst. If I'm
Yeah,
deciding whether I should do something, whether it's take another line or do whatever, and I just going crazy with it, I literally will make myself decide with a pro or con list. I write down all the pros and all the cons, whichever list wins, that's the one I take. But that is
that's true.
basically fear. That's looking at your fears and figuring out, if you can deal with it.
But at least that's a method for analyzing the fear and then kind of overcoming it,
Yep. Yep. Well,
right?
I just figure if there's more pros than cons, well, I got to do it. I got to do it. But
Okay,
if the cons win, well, I
yeah,
shouldn't, so.
yeah. So before we kind of drill into our own fears, I got a couple more. So I'm going to read from our one of our my favorite books, The Return to Love.
Oh, no,
Um,
I've got
this
these.
is a simple. This is healing. Oh, nice, very good, very good. This is a simple one. It's on page XX, so 20 of the introduction. Love is what we were born with. Fear is what we have learned here.
Say it again.
Love is what we were born with.
Okay.
Fear is what we have learned here.
Yep. That's a good
I
quote.
mean, kids aren't,
True.
I mean, a baby, I don't imagine has any fear. There's no, like, they don't
No,
even know what it is. So how would they?
even when they're crying, it's just a reaction to being hungry or whatever. They're not scared. They just need something.
So we learn to be scared of things because
And,
shit
uh, and we're
happens.
taught to be scared of things. That's
Shit
hot.
happens.
That's
Yeah.
this. Yeah. Good quote.
So then, page 24, same book. Love in your mind produces love in your life. This is the meaning of heaven. Fear in your mind produces fear in your life. And this is the meaning of hell.
Wow. That's
Right?
great. That's great.
I
Wow.
mean, you, I've been there, you've been there. I mean, when you're in total fear, you're in the living hell. You really are. Like it
You
is
are.
just a
You are.
living.
You can't even see the good things around you, you know?
No,
Can't even see the good things around you.
no. Yeah.
Okay. Well, that's amazing. Uh, I guess we should get going. So I guess today it's not going to be all just talking about my fears. It's going to be a lot of it in your fears. I think we've touched on some stuff. I want to discuss like a little bit about fear itself and
Yeah.
and some fears of other people. I know I won't mention anybody by name. And some famous fears, some fears maybe the countries have had all together. Fears we're having right now as nations. There's lots to talk about. So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
uh, yeah. Do you want to go first, or do you want me to go first?
Well, you know me. I wrote mine down. I wrote mine down.
So you prepared, so you go first.
Mine are chronological as they always are.
I like it. I like
I'm
it.
like I'm going to go back in time and I'm going to think about when fear started for me. Um and you know, I think part of addressing fear is understanding what your fears are because the only way you're going to get past something is to know what it is. If you
Exactly.
don't know what it is or if you're not thinking about it, then you're just going to be in it. So at least talking about it um, can help you find a solution. And I think people have listened to our stories. They know what's happened in our lives. Um, we've both been through addiction. That was a very, of course, fearful time. But on the other side of it, as I continue in my journey to sobriety, I've had to really drill down in a lot of personal stuff, a lot of stuff that's gone on in my head. Um, and that's a process. Like, don't get me wrong, it's not easy. It's not easy because facing these fears, brings up a lot of emotion and it brings up things that you may not have thought about before because you
Right.
start reflecting on it more and more and
Right.
more. I honestly think some of my earliest fears were probably of my dad.
Right.
and I love my dad. Like I'm not, but he was a tall, big guy, tall. He had a big voice. He had his own stuff from his life, and just he was a stressful person. He was a stressed out person, and yeah, he used to argue with my mom, and that's scary as
That's
a kid.
yeah, I understand. Yeah.
Scary. It's scary, and for anybody out there that has experienced this, it's it's traumatic,
It's
and
it's awful. I've dealt with it and I've done it, which makes me feel even worse anyway.
it's hard. It's hard. I've done it too, and um, yeah, it makes me emotional just talking about it. There's no question about it. Um, we all have, we all have stuff, and I'm sure he didn't want to be that way, but he was, and it caused fear in our family. It caused fear in me. Anyway, we'll
And he
move on.
wasn't doing it to scare you, but
Of course not. Of course
but
not. He had his
but
own stresses and whatever, and that's how he responded to them. I guess I don't even, I never really got a chance to even talk to him about it. He's gone. I wish I could have, but I didn't. I don't know what. I don't. He loved my mom. I know he did. I know he didn't want to do that, but he did, and it affected me for sure. I think the thing that comes up next is, as I progress in my life, as you get, into your teens, and you get into this sort of fear of like not being accepted,
mm,
right?
mm.
Am I cool enough? Do I have the right clothes? Do I have this? Like, it's like, am I going to have friends? How am I
You're,
going to be like,
you're
who
stealing
am
all
I?
mine. You're stealing all mine. This isn't fair.
All this stuff. Well, I mean, I think everybody's has this, right? It's not like I'm, maybe not everybody's dad was, they were, but we all get to that point where we kind of like we have fear of not fitting in,
Right.
right? And we're not comfortable in our own self, or I mean, some people are. I don't think I was in our own self to just say, oh, I'm just going to be myself and everybody's going to like me.
No.
So I think definitely I went through that phase that we all do. And then also in that same time in the teen years, hormonal, everything's going on, you know, I went through a phase where I was like, am I going to live up to my parents' expectations?
Oh yeah.
Um, am I going to make the right decisions? Am I going to like, I had a fear of, I had a fear of not knowing what I wanted to do with my life. Um, and that's a very difficult phase of life. I mean, it's just, so many different things going on in your head. Um,
And does it ever stop?
I mean,
I'm not through that one yet.
I don't think it ever stops, but it might get better as you kind of, maybe become more comfortable with yourself or your own, you know, your career, your security at home, your relationships, your family relationships. So it certainly can. It, I mean, does it for everyone? Of course not. I still have, difficulties kind of deciding who I am, and you know, that's where I get to sort of in the next few. I'm, you know, fear of like I think right now one of my biggest things, and I don't know what this isn't like midlife crisis stuff, and midlife crisis I don't think is the best, you know, description of it, but you get to a point in your life, I'm 56, where you're like, what is my purpose? Like, what am I going to fulfill my potential in life? Like, am I going to leave a mark? Are people going to remember me? Um, that's a big one for me right now. Like, you know, I've been making a lot of changes. I've been kind of reassessing myself, and that's a big one. Um,
I
am I going to
understand that
leave a
one.
mark?
It's a
You
hard
know,
one. I know
it
when
is.
I know when I was really suicidal, which I'm not going to talk about today. I've talked about it, but I remember that's something that goes through my head. I literally thought no one's going to care anyway. No one, I've left nothing. No one's going to care if I'm gone. No, it won't even be a blip, you know? The world will still move on, you know, and it's not a good feeling. It's not a good feeling.
It's not.
And it's not true.
It's not true.
Of course not. I've got
There's the
people
people
that
that
love me.
love
I've
you,
got
that
people that
love
love
you
you.
for
I love
sure.
you. I mean, of course, but I get the thought. I get it.
For sure. And I think especially in the last 20 years or so, as social media has become more and more prevalent, there's just so much more exposure to the world. You know, you can put yourself out there to be liked, to be loved, to be remembered. Um, you know, you see people that have millions of followers that people are, you know, listening to every day, and then you're like, oh, I have 500 followers, and it's like, you know, you compare yourself, right? It's
And
logical.
social media, that people are putting out these perfect lives that we think, oh, we're failing to look what they're doing. And it's all bullshit. It's not
Yeah,
even true. You know, it's not even true. How do we live up?
there,
How do we live up to something that's fake? You
yeah,
can't, you know. But it's hard. And think of what it's doing to people. You and I are old enough to maybe realize that it's fake. There's young people that don't realize it's fake, and they're trying to be. They're seeing these perfect images and perfect lives, and they're totally think they're failing life. It's not good.
yeah, yeah, um, yeah. And I think that ties into just sort of having connection around you. I mean, certainly a fear of not being loved, not being liked. Um, that's a tough one for sure. I mean, you know, especially, and I went through it when I was really in the heart of my addiction, where I was like, I had a fear of people seeing who I was in that, you know, seeing where I was. I think for a lot of years, I lived a fairly content life. Um, I was happy enough, but there
Things
was
came, things came fairly easy for you for a long time, didn't they? Or am
think
I just
so.
saying
I
that? It
think
seemed like
so.
I don't mean easy, but I don't know. I always thought you had it together, man. I always thought you were the coolest cat, right? I just did.
And I'm not saying that I didn't have it together, but um, yeah, I
Maybe
think
that
at
was
some
what
point you're,
maybe you were projecting that more that maybe that's
I
not
think so. I
going
think
on.
there was some, you know, there was still some stuff going on internally. I mean, you know, when you have that trauma, when you have pain from your childhood, which we all do, you tend to sort of suppress it. And I was definitely suppressing it with alcohol for sure. There were times where, yeah, I would just drink to forget.
And I think I live, and I'm not going to interrupt you. I'm going to let you keep going, but I think I always think of myself as the duck on the water, right? Like, because when I tell people all my fears and what my addictions and what I worry about, and I'd have people go like, "What are you talking about?" Like 10 years ago, like, Sean, you got a great house, a great family, two cars, a great Harley, you buy new Harleys all the time, you have everything together. But
Right.
I'm like the duck on the water. Like I look cool and calm and beautiful, but underneath my feet are going 100 million miles a minute, right? I'm just like,
Right.
oh, scared to death, scared to death, scared to death. So you're projecting one thing, but it's not the reality. So,
Yeah.
um, but
Yeah. I think it's tricky to reflect on because I don't know how far I am along with conquering my fears, but when you start looking at what your fears are and what, you know, who you are, and you're not entirely happy with what that looks like, it's a lot of work to sort of get to a place where you really kind of like love yourself,
mm,
right? Um, you know, when we were talking about the definitions and we were talking about you know, Yoda and how fear turns to hate and you know, when you don't love yourself, there's a lot of fear in that, right? Because you feel like you're kind of living like an egoic kind of false self. Like I think I created a false self to protect myself
right.
because I didn't really want to address some of the fears and you know and traumas that I was feeling inside,
Right. Right.
right?
And that all kind of, I feel like with you, like I wasn't there, but I know you've talked about it when you kind of had that intervention and like you'd never really been called an alcoholic before. That must have been a weird spot for you. Like I can't imagine how you're because you probably knew you were an alcoholic, but
Oh,
it just hadn't been verbalized before.
yeah, I definitely did, and there was that. I think again that that was that fear of being seen
Right,
as someone that I didn't want to be seen as,
right,
right? I mean, you know, you're kind of going along, going, oh, everything's fine, when you know inside it's really not fine, and most of the time, everyone around you realizes it's not fine. You do too, but you're not willing to admit it. They all know it, but you don't want them to know it.
right. Plus, you've got an addiction, and your addiction wins all battles, right? So,
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
you're not even really yourself, so
yeah.
that's a whole other topic, I know, but it's just it's tough. I remember looking in the mirror when I was in the middle of my addiction, and literally just staring at myself in the mirror. I mean this, staring at myself, going, "How can this be you? This can't be you. This
Me
has to
too.
be somebody else, man. It has to be." I'm
Me too.
Sean Pauli. I'm a good guy. This can't be fucking me. I can't be a
Right.
drug addict, you know?
How did I get here?
How did I get here? And how do I get out of it? Can I ever get out of it?
Yeah,
There was a lot of times I thought I would never be anything but a drug addict. Like I couldn't see any way out. I was so
yeah.
scared. And that's fear. I was scared to death.
Me
Scared to
too.
death of withdrawal, scared to death of everything.
Me too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I still have fear. I mean, you've been sober 7 years, eight
7.5, yeah.
and a half. I mean, I've been sober for 111 days. I
Yeah.
mean, I keep kind of like, I keep sort of patting myself on the back going, well, okay, you've been sober actually like in the last 13 months, with the exception of, I think it's 7 days, I've been sober for whatever that is, 379
Amazing.
days.
It's great.
But I still have a fear of needing to go back to that, to drinking, to kind of deal with my fears, which is this weird cycle of, well, it didn't work before, but I'm still scared of trying it again
Right.
because it's a battle. It is a battle still every day to kind of really do this deep self, like this deep dive into, my own traumas and my own pain, and getting out of it is not it's not a you can't change it overnight.
No, you're dealing with a lot of challenges right now. And of
I am.
course you're going to think about drinking because drinking, you're going through so much that anybody would have a hard time dealing with, and then drinking kills that, right? But it's like that, and I know everyone quotes this. It's not a genius thing to say, but I guess a genius said it. You know, insanity, the definition of insanity is trying the same thing over and over again, expecting different results. That was Albert
Yeah,
Einstein. But that is an
yeah,
amazing quote.
yeah,
It's like, yeah, opiates, they didn't work the first time around, but this time, this time I'll be okay. This time it'll be work. And it's like if you think, oh well, this time, maybe a glass of wine a night will help me calm down. Like, of course not. Of course
right,
not. But I get the
right.
thought process. I get it.
Yeah, I mean, look, I could add to the list of fears a fear of change. I mean, we all get comfortable in a certain situation and we're like, oh, this is really comfortable. I'm good. Like, this is good, even though it may not be. So then all of a sudden you have to, yeah, you have to kind of say to yourself, okay, well, so now I need to change, but I don't know how. So
Right.
now all of a sudden it goes back to what we were saying at the beginning, before the podcast. Like, you know, I I okay, I wouldn't, I have a fear of attempting to climb Mount Everest because I probably wouldn't make it. I might die. But if I've climbed Mount Everest 10 times and I've done it, well, I've conquered the fear. So for the most part, so I can do it. But
Right.
when you haven't you know, when you haven't done things a certain way and now you're kind of forced to try it, there's a fear in it because it's unknown. It's scary,
Scary.
right?
Well, you
It
said it,
is.
man. We're talking
It
about
is.
fear. It's scary. It's
And
life is scary.
a lot of it you have to do on your own. Like this is my this is
99%.
this is my internal battle. I mean, the fact that I have people around me that support me is amazing. But at the end of the day, it's my journey, it's my battle, it's my internal battle. And in the process, of course, through the addiction, through I pissed off people, I upset people, I made bad decisions. I have to live with those. Um, so, people that I want to have around me that they're not necessarily here for me at the moment. And I think as I continue to change, hopefully they'll come back into my life, but I don't know. So there's a fear in that too.
Right. Yeah, it's not a guarantee
It's
because
not a guarantee.
because
And,
their
and
their journey is their journey, and it doesn't mean their journey might not go with your journey, regardless of what you do.
exactly.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah.
No.
So
Well,
let's talk about some of your fears.
oh, I have no fears.
You want to start a company called Scared Shitless. Tell us about that.
I've worked on it for a long time because I used to see all these cars with the no fear written on them. No fear, no fear. And I just wanted to put mine scared shitless, man. And I'm going to start that company. I've actually made a couple moves to do it already. So
Nice.
all I want is some stickers and t-shirts that say scared shitless. And I think I'll sell 1 million of them because I think we're all scared shitless. So, um,
I guess like fear is it's a catalyst to change. So there is something in a way healthy about it if you look at it like that, right?
yeah, absolutely. I mean, so I kind of, even though it's mostly just in my head, I was kind of going the same way because I have been scared literally my whole life. I remember being scared of my dad. Dad never hit me. Dad wasn't a physical guy. I have this one memory of him having his belt off, but I don't think he ever used it.
Yeah.
But yet I was still scared to death of dad. I
Yeah.
mean, scared to death of him. Like he would do this thing when he got mad and his jaw would move like
Lunch. Yeah.
clenching him,
Yeah.
start pulsating.
Yeah.
I was scared to death of him. Scared to
Yeah.
death of him. And I mean, in that way, I guess it was good because I respected him, you know.
That's not
Um,
that's not there's nothing good. Like you can earn respect without being scared to death of
oh, I
somebody.
was scared to death. And if I ever talked back to my mother, I was really in trouble. Like I was not allowed to do it. Yet
Right.
the example he set was, he was drunk a lot.
Yeah.
Um, Sometimes his drunkenness, not sometimes, usually for a while, his drunkenness meant having a good time. Like, oh, let's dance, let's party, let's turn music on, let's have fun. But then he'd have the drinking would go too far, and then he'd be an asshole. And
Yeah.
and him and my mom had just screaming knockdown fights. I don't think he ever really got physical with her, but I have a memory of her like down on her knees on the front steps and him dragging her in and I remember my best friend's mom used to come pick me up. They'd call her to come get me because they were fighting so much because I had to get out of the house. And anything that feels like, oh, hi, buddy. Yeah, my mom and dad are fighting again. Um,
Yeah.
they fought a lot. He was drunk a lot. And I remember one of I remember I was like, well, I was only in Truro. I lived in Truro, Nova Scotia from the time I was 4 till I was 7. But one of my worst fears is I was down at my friend's house, and it was about 4 houses away, and I saw Dad putting his luggage in his car. And he
Yeah.
traveled a lot, but it was the wrong day. And I raced home, and he pulled out of the driveway before I could get there and he was gone. And we drove up to Moncton. I remember being at my grandmother's and mom crying all the time, but I didn't understand what was going on. But I remember like it was yesterday, Chris, and it was awful. And
Right.
he came back, and we packed up and went back home, because mom always stayed with them. Knowing now, I think he was unfaithful to her. I think he was a lot, but I think he got caught. But that was so I had the fear of dad, and then I had the fear of dad leaving. I didn't want my dad to leave, even though I was scared of him. I loved him. I loved my parents a lot. I mean, I went in and kissed my parents goodnight till the time I was 20 years old. I mean, that's just what I did. No matter what, I always went and said, kissed him goodnight. But, and then dad would do this thing. He would, he wouldn't hit me, but even when I was like a teenager, like an older teenager, he would, if he was mad at me, he would take me in the room and scream at me and lecture me like for an hour, just screaming. He did it a few times with my girlfriend, who's now my wife. She remembers she'd be in the other room listening to him, just
Right.
berating me. And how do you
Yeah.
think I felt when I had to go see my girlfriend after that? Like, you know,
This big.
this big. And she, of course, felt bad for me, but and I and I would frustrate dad because I wouldn't say anything. Like I wouldn't say a word. I would just sit there and he would get madder and madder because I wouldn't fight back and I just wouldn't talk.
No.
Couldn't. I was frozen.
No room for talking back. My dad was a lecturer too. He wouldn't scream at me, but he would make me feel like I was like a speck of dust
Right.
on the floor.
Exactly. Like everything was wrong. And it could be over something stupid. I remember one of the worst ones was I think I might have talked about this, but I like to go to the movies and dad wouldn't go. He just never liked going.
Yeah.
And then one day I came home with my girlfriend and my sister and her boyfriend and dad and mom weren't there and they came home and I said, "Oh, where were you guys?" I said, "Oh, we went to see Tango and Cash." I remember the movie. And I love those kind of movies. And I went, "Oh, what? You didn't take me? Like I always beg you to go."
Yeah.
I got an hour screaming at that. We don't
Right.
have to fucking walk around fucking on you and everything. You think we're just here walking on eggshells for whatever you fucking. I'm like, holy fuck. I just said I would have liked to have gone. Like, what the fuck,
Wow.
man?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that was the
Sorry.
kind of shit that I got all the time, you know.
Yeah.
Um, and then sometimes dad could be a loving, good guy, but it's hard on your head.
It
Um,
is. It is for
so
sure.
that messed with me for a long time. Um, then, you know, I was scared as a kid. I remember multiple times in bed crying, and mom would come in and say what was wrong. And I'd be like 10 years old, and I'd be scared of everyone dying, like scared to death. I'm like, aren't you guys gonna die? Like, because I maybe someone died I knew or someone's parent, and I would just, and mom would say, well, you know, she'd try to calm me down, but I'd be like, I'm gonna lose you guys. I'm gonna be alone. I can't stand to lose you, mom, and especially mom. And I was scared of that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And then things would cause fears that stayed with me way into my adulthood. I remember going to church, and church loved to put fear into you, like hell and going to
Yeah.
hell and sinning. But as a
Yeah.
little kid, you're taking this in and you're like, holy shit, like hell, like I'm gonna burn forever, forever. Like
Yeah.
I didn't swear till I was 18 years old, Chris, because I was swearing was a sin. Like I was so scared of it. My friends were fuck this and fuck this, and I'd be like, whoa, I can't
Right.
swear.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they'd make fun of me because I wouldn't swear, but I wouldn't. I just wouldn't. The worst one, when I was about 13, they took us to church and they showed us a movie, big screen on the front of the church, real life like people, actors,
Yeah.
and it was about the second coming. So
Yeah.
Christ gets crucified and all that, but Christ is supposed to come back. So before he comes back, the second coming, the devil takes over the world and
Yeah.
you have to get stamped with 666 on your forehead if you want food and water and a house. If you don't do that, they put you in a guillotine and chop your head off.
Oh
And
my
I'm
God.
watching this movie of people getting there. First off, all the good people disappeared and everyone else is left behind. If you're left
Oh my.
behind, you get 666, which means you can get food in that for your family, but you're going to hell.
Yeah.
Or if you want to go to heaven, you can fight it off, but you get your head chopped off. Buddy, do you think I could handle that at 13 years old?
Oh my God.
What the fuck? And this isn't like watching a scary movie. They're telling me this is what's going to happen.
Real.
I'm scared to
Yeah.
death way into my adult life. I remember one day coming home and the lawnmower was on the front lawn and nobody was home. And I was convinced that they'd been taken without me and I'd been left behind. And I was
Right.
crying and screaming. I couldn't get a hold of anybody. No one had cell phones back then. And I thought everyone had gone. I thought, oh, Kim and mom and dad, they're all gone and I've been left behind. And I mean, and when they finally got home an hour later, I was shaking. I was shaking.
Yeah.
And I went through that for years that I was going to get left behind. And that's to do that to somebody. Like, and the Bible. Like I look at my little sisters, like 5 years old, and they got the Bible in their hand. I think, have you read that fucking thing? I
Right.
mean, it's okay if you believe in it, but have you read what's in that Bible? Read it and tell me a 5 year old should have it in their hand.
Right.
No way. No way. So that's a different topic. We can do that a different week, but that was a fear I had for sure that just, you know, stuck with me forever and ever. And then as I grew up, and it's never left me. You touched on a little bit, but with my way was I always feel like a phony. Like I feel like to this day I'm not anything. I'm a phony. Like I've thought I was going to fail at my career, my whole career. Like someone's going to finally realize that this guy is not good at this. He's been faking it, and they're going to find out. Now I've had the same career for 35 years, but I still feel like I'm phony. I still feel like I'm not doing good at it. I still feel like, and I never felt like I was being who I wanted to be. I always felt like I was changing who I had to be what I thought I should be. So even in school, even though I was a great student, I started screwing up in high school because I started hanging around with kids that weren't going to school anymore, a little bit older than me, but they were cool and they were tough and they were cool kids. And I couldn't believe these kids would hang around with me. Like
Right.
I'm part of this group. Like holy shit! Like these guys think I'm cool. Like
Right.
thinking back, fuck them. I should have gone to school, hang around, but I thought I was cool. I bought a Harley when I was 16 years old
Yeah.
and drove it to school and then got a full-time job. So I go to school from first thing in the morning till 3:30. I go to my grandfather's and have supper and drive to work for 4:30, and I'd work till 1 in the morning. And that was so I could pay for my Harley. And
Right.
but dad had a Harley. So I bought his
Yeah.
old Harley and then I thought I wanted to be a biker and I had a Confederate flag scarf on my head of me
Yeah.
and I was a biker, man. I was a biker. And then I used to read Hell's Angels book like I wanted to be a Hell's Angel, right? That was my dream to be a biker
Right.
until I read enough about them, and I'm not going to badmouth the Hells Angels. I'm sure they're great
Good.
people, but I'm not going to say the Hells Angels. I think they are good people, whatever. But just a biker. I read a lot about bikers, and I realized that they had more rules than I have. I don't want to be a biker. They have too many rules. I don't want to live like that, right? But but then I became a salesman because my dad told me to be a salesman. Like when
Yeah.
I wasn't doing good in school, dad didn't kick my ass and say, get back to school. I'm sure he
Yeah.
did a couple times, but when he finally gave up, he just said, you know what, you can come work for me. That's fine.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
But
I mean, everything you were just talking about, I mean, you were sort of emulating your dad,
I
right? You're
was.
like, okay, well, he's got a bike. I'll get a bike. I want to be cool, mate. You know, you probably thought your dad was pretty
I
cool.
did. My friends
So,
all thought he was cool.
this parental representation is like, obviously we all, there's a period in your life where you're like, I don't want to be like my parents, but then it's like all of a sudden you are because that's how that they raised you. What they're your
That's all
role
I got.
models. They're,
Plus, I have all my cousins and all my friends saying, your dad's so cool. Uncle Bobby's so cool. You're so lucky. You're so lucky. He's so cool. He's so cool. So I wanted to be like dad,
all this
but
stuff.
I never got a chance to find out who I was.
Right.
I was driving a Harley because dad had one. And then I got my girlfriend pregnant, just like my dad got his girlfriend pregnant. And then
Yeah.
dad said, well, you can come. Dad didn't, I'm glad he didn't. He didn't he supported us for I mean, he used to tell us when we were in our teens, whoever got the first baby got $10,000. Like, who says that to a
Wow.
teenage kid? I never got the 10 grand, by the way. But
Right.
so then I get my girlfriend pregnant. He doesn't say, well, okay, we're going to get you going to college. We're going to keep you here and get your life going. No, it's, well, you can come work for me. Didn't
Yeah.
train me, gave me a briefcase, sent me off to this terrible buyer, and I was scared to death talking about fear. And he said,
Yeah.
if you get an order, you can do it. So I got an order, but I was scared to death. I remember driving 4 or 5 hours to see a customer or go to a store opening, not going in and driving back home because I was scared because I didn't want to do it.
Right.
And I didn't mind doing so much if I was traveling with dad. Like I always say, it's easy to be Robin, it's hard to be Batman, like,
Yeah.
it's not so bad being
Yeah.
decided.
Yeah. Sure.
And but I was always scared of it until I eventually got good at it because I was forced to get good at it because my dad had an accident and he couldn't work anymore and I had to take the lead and I forced myself. You think about fear. I remember the first time in my business, I have to do product knowledge a lot in front of people. And I
Yeah.
remember the first one I had to do on my own was in front of about 15 people, and I was scared to death. I was
Yeah.
sitting outside the Gallery One in Dartmouth in my car. I turned on Lose Yourself by Eminem,
Yeah.
and I'm out there, just cranking, Mom Spaghetti,
Yeah. Yeah.
one shot, you got one shot. And I'm just like,
One
so I go in, I
opportunity.
got some stuff ready, and I prepared the hell of it, and I went in there, and I was just like, oh, when it was over, they all come over and told me what a great job I did, and it was awesome. And from that moment on, I was fine. So I conquered that fear, but it was hard. It was hard. Um,
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, listening to your story, it's similar to mine in a lot of ways. I think, you know, and I talked about it a little bit about sort of finding yourself. Like I talked about like what's called a midlife crisis, or it doesn't have to be, it's not even a
Oh, I've had
crisis.
12. I've had 12 of them. It's okay.
It's like it's almost like a midlife review. It doesn't have
Yeah.
to be a crisis. Like you, sometimes you just do something, you just are someone, you do the things that you do, it kind of it happens. And then all of a sudden you're like, is this who I want to be? And you got to like that's when you have to take this like deep reflective dive into like what do I really like. And God bless you if it happens early in life. God bless you if you actually figure it out early on. This is what I really want to be. I mean, I think we've touched on this on a couple of shows, like, you know, where something happened. Oh, with Patria, for example, you know, not to break, but she had an incident where she broke her leg. Remember the story? And then she decided that wanted to become a doctor. And wow, amazing. But like, where you're just kind of going through life and you're like, okay, I'm in sales and I'm pretty good at it. But like all of a sudden it's like no longer fulfilling. And you're like, okay, now what? Now I'm
Now
56.
what?
And I'm like, what now? It's a deep dive. And it's like,
Scary.
you got to really start looking at what is really important to you. What is meaningful? What mark can you leave? Like it's
And you start to put a lot of more time behind you than it's ahead of you. So you're running out of time.
yeah, I mean, I gotta read I didn't read this one on the back, but like, I don't think you can read it. Maybe you can read it from
Okay.
this from
Our
the,
deepest fear is not that we are inadequate. Our deepest fear is that we are powerful beyond measure.
I mean, the reality is we are all powerful beyond measure. You know, I Nelson Mandela is a human being just like me. You know, you mentioned The Rock, or you like, and that's a silly reference, but like they're just human beings. Like
He's,
we're all
but
human
he's
beings.
amazing. I think The Rock is amazing.
I do too. I think seems like an incredible guy. He's you know making changes in the world. Like we all have the capacity for that, but I think we're held back by things that happen in our childhood, like
By fear.
things the way, you know, I don't blame my parents, but the reality is there are chains, there are handcuffs that you drag along with you in life, and sometimes they drag you down. Sometimes people can't go on. Sometimes you fall into deep addiction, but there is always going to be an opportunity to like get yourself out of it and like real and really like kind of figure it out. Like to just get up every morning and go, I'm a good person. I love myself and live in that place of love, not in that place of fear and hate. Like, just like, I love this day. I love that tree. I love being on the podcast. I love you. I love people in my life. I love myself, like all this stuff. But it is really a retraining. Like, you really have to like retrain yourself. Like, you have to like reparent yourself. You really, like,
You
and
do.
I'm doing therapy. I'm doing the things that I need to do because I, I don't know how to do it on my own. I need help,
Absolutely. Chris,
right?
reparenting is a good way to say it because
It's
I, I feel like I literally have not really had I've never been behind the wheel driving the car of my life, not once. Like I feel like I've just been told what to do.
yeah.
Like I got my girlfriend pregnant. That's my fault. And
Oh, it's a
I've been married
blessing.
to her for 35 years.
Yeah, it's a blessing.
It
You,
is. And I've got my
yeah,
children who I love more than anything, but I definitely was forced to take care of them because I was 19 years old and I was scared to death, but I did it. But I was
yeah,
being a salesman because dad dragged me along to that. And I took the easy way, I guess, and went with him and listened. I didn't have to listen to him, but I did. I let him
yeah,
influence everything I did. And I realized way too late that he didn't bring me on to work for him for me. He brought me on to work for him for him. He wanted to
yeah,
retire. He wanted me to pay him. That's another
yeah,
story. But I never really, and then I had to take care of my children. And I remember
yeah,
when I bought my first house, I was in my mid-20s, and I remember sitting there with my best friend. I had my hands on the wall of this little bungalow I bought. And I
yeah,
looked at him and said, I can't keep this. I can't do this.
yeah,
I'm an idiot. I can't raise a family and buy a house. And
yeah.
then, you
And
know,
yet you did. You did.
I did. I was scared of losing it. I bought a bigger house. I've been scared of losing it since the day I had it, but I've had it for 20 years.
Yeah,
But I still feel like a phony. I still feel like I
yeah,
just have been faking it. But I think what you just said, now I'm 54 years old. My children
Yeah,
have both made lives for themselves. They're married, they have great jobs, they have their own homes, they're doing great.
yeah, yeah.
Um, so all of a sudden, it's just me and Shonda. And
And
what do
yeah,
we do? Or what do I
and
do? My
I
life is
think,
taking care of my
yeah.
family. They
I
don't
mean,
need me anymore.
listening to you, I feel again. I think there's a lot of parallels. I think I did, again, I was kind of a little lost after university and I was working and then my dad he kind of semi-retired and then he's like, "Do you want to buy a business together?" And I was like, "Okay." It wasn't really my decision, it was his decision. I don't regret it. It brought me great things in my life, but was I driving the car? Not so much. I feel like yeah, I was on cruise control for a long time
Mm,
until all of a sudden my car started breaking down a little bit and all of a sudden I'm like off the side of the road and I'm sitting in the ditch going, okay, well now what? I don't really know how to drive my own car, so now what do I have to do?
yeah. And
And that's the work
your dad's
that's the
gone.
work that's the
Mhm.
work that I'm doing. That's the work that you're doing. We're trying to we started this podcast for one reason. Well, two maybe. One was probably to kind of tell our stories and help ourselves, and two was to help other people.
Right.
Um, I
Through
think
our story.
originally, of course, the title is the Chivalrous Guys. We directed it towards men because we're men, and that's what's where that's kind of what we understand. So we tell our story. We hopefully other people can listen to our story and maybe they can learn something from it. But the reality is, you can be on autopilot or cruise control in your car for a long time, but eventually, like you do have to drive your own car because that's really the only way that you're going to realize that you're powerful beyond measure.
Absolutely.
Because when you're driving your own car, you're just going through the motions,
Absolutely. And
right?
going through the motions every
And
day. Like,
no, I think something that we both are very passionate about is like you know, wellness, men's mental health, men's wellness. Like I'm not, of course, I'm not saying for any, and this is, this cautiousness in society these days. Of course, I'm not, I of course can care about women and trans people and gay, everybody. I'm not saying just men, but we're talking about our experiences as men, what happened to us from our childhood with dads that were alcoholic, that were aggressive, and the things that happened in our lives that led us to this.
right.
Like,
Absolutely.
God bless you if you had a wonderful, caring, nurturing dad, because you're probably a lot better off than both of us are. But whatever, we've been through what we've been through, and now we're just trying to like make it
Oh,
better.
I always say pain is personal. And you know what? There's God bless them, but then there's people that had dads that beat the living fuck out of them or sexually abused them. Or I mean, there's a lot worse than we had too. I mean,
Yeah,
but you can only talk about your own experience. That's all I know. And the last one I want to talk about, because I know we're gonna have to wrap up, but I want to make sure I talk about it because it's kind of what, and I swear we should have fear part two because I got more to talk about. But
we always do.
talked about my dad hollering at me and fighting with my mom and how bad that affected me. And then
Yeah,
I did the same fucking thing.
yeah,
I Me and Shonda would have just screaming matches,
yeah,
screaming our guts out at each other, and probably my fault.
yeah,
The kids could hear it and they'd be
yeah.
crying. And
Hmm.
I can't forgive myself for it. I cannot. And my son, a couple years ago, came over and ripped me apart. He had a list of things that I'd done wrong.
Yeah,
And I sat there crying, and I wouldn't talk to him for a few months because I thought he went overboard. I didn't think it was true. And
yeah.
some of it probably wasn't, but some of it fucking was.
But it
And
was his truth.
it
Let's be
was his,
honest.
it was,
Right?
and he was crying because he was scared to death to tell me. And I realized he'd been scared to tell me his whole life.
Yeah,
And it's awful. It's awful that I made him feel that way. Now we have a good relationship now. We're
yeah,
okay.
yeah.
But and we've always had an okay relationship, but I realized that I wasn't a good dad. I would go around saying, "Well, I've been a good dad. I've been a good dad. I've been here. I've supported them. I bought them gifts. Oh, here's gifts, 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 gifts." Right? But I
Yeah.
realized that I did some pretty rotten fucking things to those kids. And how do you forgive yourself for that? How do you move on from that?
I think you just say, look, I was a good dad. Was I perfect? No. Did I make mistakes that my dad made? Yes. but there's at least an opportunity for you to fix it. You can't change the past. You know that. And you also can't predict the future. So you at least have an opportunity with your son to talk about it, to explain to him what happened, why you did it. It wasn't you didn't do it because you didn't love him. You had your own stuff. Like I think you have a wonderful opportunity to still communicate openly and honestly with your son about just being a human being and just trying to fix your relationship going forward. That's all you can do. We both know you can't change the past. And most of the fear that we have when we talk about fear is of things in the future. I'm not I'm not scared of anything that's happened in my past. I how what you can't be why? There's nothing I'm not really fearful in the present either. I could be fearful about what might happen.
I've
Quoting Mark Twain,
I've been
may never.
scared. I've been scared of what might happen my whole life. My whole
But
adult life, I've owed money to the government. I'm
yeah,
always going to come in and take everything. I live
yeah,
with the sword of Damocles hanging over my head every day. I remember my sister said one day, "I don't know how you've lived your life that way." I'll tell you how I've lived: just scared to death, stressed
right,
out, and worried. Now I'm
right.
driving. I drive basically for a living, and I'm driving a 10-year-old truck that I can't afford to fix, that I can't afford a new one. And every time I go out, I'm scared I'm never coming back because there's nothing left of it. But
Right.
what can I do? I'm gonna drive it till I can't drive it. I got it. It's my
Yeah,
job,
but
you know.
if your car broke down on the side of the road, I don't know, your son would probably come pick you up. You'd drive home and you'd figure it out. It's
I got CAA. They come get me.
yeah,
But
exactly. Like at the end of the day, and I don't know. I mean, the government stuff. I don't know. Like,
it's
yeah, of
scary.
course, it's not
It's
great, but I don't. I think most of that stuff you can figure out. I think you can.
we're doing better because a couple of years ago I handed over all the finances to Shonda for the first time in my life, and that was scary.
Yeah,
I handled the money my whole life. I took care of
yeah,
things, and I've been having a hard time dealing with it. I don't like the fact I got to ask her for the money and ask her for a little bit and ask for this, but thank God because she's got things going the right direction.
yeah,
She's got
yeah.
them. She's paying them off. We've paid off a couple parts that were important. She did it. We're doing what
Yeah.
we have to do. But I then I get regret. Like, why didn't I do this 15 years ago? And then I get regretful that I can't take my wife to Florida and I haven't got and I buddy, I got no retirement plan. I'm gonna work the catering at my funeral, jump in the coffin, we'll be done. Because I'll
You
have
don't
to,
know that. You don't know that at this point. I think,
I probably won't get the job. I don't know.
I mean, let's be honest. Maybe Shonda's better with money than you are.
Maybe,
Okay.
maybe. No,
So
she's
then
fucking better at it. She is
so
fucking
then
better at it.
her handling the finances is a good thing.
Money, it's a good thing. Money to me,
Right.
it's gonna sound awful.
That was a good decision.
I hate being broke. I can't stand it. But money, when I have it, it doesn't mean anything to me. It doesn't have a
Right.
lot of value. I just like, oh yeah, let's
Right.
buy that. Oh yeah, you need money. I used to give people money, buy them dinner, like, whatever you need. I like
Right.
anyway. That's
I
another.
think
That's
I
another
know. But
podcast.
again, I think there's a lot to be said with just conquering fear through mindset. Like it's like, we mentioned like, yeah, our fear, we have fears. I mean, I'm not going to get attacked by a saber-toothed tiger on my porch right now,
If one
which is
jumps you right now, I'm gonna be surprised.
that would be you'd go viral, you'd get a
I'd
bunch
be
of
rich.
money, and you're going. So, um,
Saber-tooth tiger in Tottenham.
I think a lot of it is mindset. I think a lot of it is like, when you wake up going, I'm broke, I'm broke, I'm broke. Well, you're living your reality then. Like if you just say to yourself, I'm rich, I am rich. I mean, the reality is, I think I read something recently. I think if you make more than $30,000 a year, you're in the top 1% in the world. Can you like do
Unbelievable. I believe
that?
it, but it's crazy.
So both of us do that. You have a home, I have a home, I have a roof over my head, I have food in my fridge. Like it's like I don't know. It's about like focusing on what it is that is
I've
good in our lives, what is positive, Like it's like getting like I think if we're gonna have a takeaway on fear is that yeah, fear is real. Of course, fear is real. There are reasons and there are good things about fear. It pushes you to do something, outside of your comfort zone. There's nothing wrong with that. Of course there is. But are a great many of the fears that we have never going to come true? Absolutely. And I think believing in yourself and believing in in who you are, how you've survived this long, done all these things that you've done is a really, really important thing in the day to day. Like I've gotten through 56 years on this earth, despite doing a lot of stupid stuff and making a lot of mistakes. I'm still here. I'm still going. What can I do today to just like live in love, be happy, not in fear, not in hate, and just what can I do? What can I do?
And not stuff like regret and envy and jealousy and like, I used to drive my Harley at 200 miles an hour. No
Yeah,
fear. Didn't I wasn't scared of that. But
right.
um but I used to get we used to go down south with Kingsdown. I'd be
Yeah,
scared to death. I used to scared I would never get back home to the kids. We'd miss our flight. We couldn't get back home. When I was on an island, I was always scared that I couldn't drive back to home if I had to be. I mean, I was for the first 15 years of my marriage life, I was scared to death that Shonda was going to leave me. I was jealous. Like if anyone looked at her, I was like, "What the fuck are you looking at my wife for?" Right? I mean, she was smoking.
right.
I was just like jealous, 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 jealous. So bad it ruined. It was not good. It was not good.
Okay. So as soon as you said jealousy, there was one definition that I didn't read, and it is what is the root of fear? Okay, listen to this one. There is in our life a constant state of comparison, competition, and the everlasting struggle to be somebody or to be nobody, which is the same thing. This is the root of all fear because it breeds envy, jealousy, and hatred,
Wow. Wow.
right? So I don't know.
Well,
It's like,
jealousy and envy are, I wish I could say I'm not an envious person, but I am. I am. I envy people that have things I don't have. I've told you before in our first podcast, I said that I envy anybody with peace of mind because I don't have any. And
so
but
yeah,
that's the last thing I'm going to say because we got to wrap it up.
yeah,
I just had an idea too. I want to run by you, but when I used to say I thought it was great because these friends, these cool kids accepted me. I was the
yeah,
same way with Mike and
mm,
with you and with Jack because all of a sudden for about 10 years there I was Mike's right hand guy and like
yeah,
I was Mike's guy and I go to his cottage and his home and we go away on these business trips with all those other people but everybody knew that I was Mike's guy, right? And I
right,
couldn't believe that Mike James accepted me that much. I couldn't believe that I was his friend. I thought this is the coolest guy I know and he wants to hang around with me. Like
right,
I felt cool by proxy. I couldn't believe it. And then when I got to be friends with you and with Brian Jack and with Endos even, like I thought these men are cooler than me. These guys are rock stars. I'm a roadie. Why are they hanging out with me? You
right.
know, that's the way I've always felt. Like I just never felt like I deserved to be there. Like and again, I thought they'd figure out who I was, and maybe Mike did. I don't know.
So okay, so I just want to touch on what you just said about peace of mind. So you said like you've always wanted peace of mind, and you are envious of people that have peace of mind. So if you're a human being and other people are human being and other human beings have had peace of mind, then surely you should be able to obtain peace of mind. I mean, that's logical, right?
It is.
So
Logic in me
I
really.
mean, really, then it comes down to prioritizing what it is that you want. I'm sure that peace of mind it's probably what most people want.
Probably.
So I guess I would just say to you, what can you do today to have peace of mind?
Do you know what I'm going to start with?
What's
And
that?
I know we've talked about preparing isn't doing it and thinking about is not doing it. Only doing it is doing it. But
Yeah.
I've never done this before. I'm going to make a list of what I have to do to get there, what I think I have to do to get there. I'm going to start. Maybe
Okay.
it's a baby step, but I'm not just saying it. I'm going to try to figure it out.
It's I think peace of mind is like acceptance
I just want to
of
wake up one morning and not think that my whole life's going to fall apart. Just one day. And I mean, that's my health, that's
what the
my marriage, that's my kids, that's my finances, that's everything. I just want to, every day I wake up and I just think, oh, fuck, man.
I
Oh,
don't want to make light of your situation because it's your situation, but the
okay,
reality is if you woke up yesterday and thought that and you're here today, then you did it yesterday. So why aren't you going to do it today?
true,
I
true.
mean, all you have to do is get through today and that you made it.
Well, you're right. You're right. Because
So
I, anyways, this is
literally
my
one
idea.
day
I'm
at
going to
a time.
stop there. I mean, you can get through. My wife and I have been going through this fear of losing our Ava for a while, and we
Yeah.
lost her. But there's,
Yeah.
but there's proof that you can deal with your fears because we lost her, we dealt with it, and now we're moving on. So you
Yeah.
can do shit. I
You
can't talk
can.
about her because I'll cry. But
It's okay.
this is my idea.
All
We've
right.
every time we've had a podcast, you and I have said, well, we got to do a part two of this. We got to do a part two of this. I think we should have a podcast called the Wrap Up Podcast.
Okay.
And we should look through some of our old podcasts where we still thought we had something to say, and maybe
Okay.
take a podcast where we take like 5 minute chunks just to deal with those, just to wrap those up because I feel like a lot of them didn't get wrapped up. And
Okay.
I'd like to have a wrap up episode where we just touch on everything quickly and then put it to
Sure.
bed
We just
and
put
then
it to bed.
move
We're not
forward.
dealing with that anymore.
Right, right.
That's
Just
it.
put it to bed. So
Yeah.
you
Yesterday is history. Tomorrow is a mystery. Today is a gift. That's why they call it the present.
absolutely,
Right.
absolutely. What any recommendations this week? I never really
Didn't even,
thought of it either.
I didn't think about it. Well, I mean, we could go back to a return to love because it's a good one.
Absolutely.
Listen,
Absolutely.
hey, yeah, I'll make a recommendation. If you can't get out and go for a run or a walk, or if you're looking for a little bit of a boost, just listen to some your favorite music today because I tell you, man, that is dopamine. Music's dopamine. It's good for you. Turn some music up and dance in your kitchen for 10 minutes. That
I
that
agree.
that's my recommendation.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think that's a good one. And yeah, I don't I wish I had prepared for it a little bit. Yeah, I'm not going to recommend something that I want to be sure. I mean, got lots of stuff I'd like to recommend, but I'll have to leave it for next time. I forgot. That's
Don't
just
worry about it.
me. But anyway, I recommend you listen to all our old episodes. Let's say that.
Exactly. Yeah.
Anyway, enough of
You're
fear.
back.
I want to tell you, I'm so happy to be back.
Me
It was
too.
weird because it's hard to talk about fear when you're so happy about something. Because I am happy to be back. As soon as we hit this record the song, I'm like, oh fuck, I miss doing this. I really do. I really do.
Good.
It's
Good.
good for me. So,
Yeah.
I love you.
Love you
Um,
too.
I hope you have a good week.
You too.
I'll put our song on and we'll talk about next week what we're going to talk about and
Sounds great.
come up with something good. Maybe we'll figure out something more positive to talk about next week.
We'll figure it out.
All right.
Love you, man. Have a great day.
You too.
Beautiful.
I always think when the song's on, I can't talk. Just staring at people is like the song's on.
They don't need a man who's got it made. Always looking for that renegade. I calls it like I sees it. A spade is a spade. A good man is a thing of yesterday. Yeah. They don't want them a good man.
Rock and roll.
See you, brother.